Yeah, the guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. This is a follow-up video to my previous one, which covered the brand new character creation menu. This is a look at the brand new tutorial that's a part of DC Universe Online. This also has a TBD release date to be determined. But in taking a look at it here, the main difference you'll see as a returning player is that there is an introduction of the universal messaging system. There has been various iterations of this tutorial in the past. Both kind of had positives and negatives. This one is set up to give you more of an insight in terms of what to expect and have the expectations going forward, because the universal messaging system has been out for a few years now, but it is a very core element to the game in terms of the leveling process. All the major events in terms of being able to learn the game, from being able to switch your gear or CR or change roles, anything like that is all going to be covered under the universal messaging system. So it makes sense to cover that in the tutorial so the players can know what to expect early on. So in terms of the prompts that you'll see, you had one about WSAD. If you're a new player, don't worry about R being space. This is tied to my keybinds. So that's why R for me is jump. Space bar is the default jump, I believe. Also, don't pay attention to that default menu in the bottom left. That's not gonna, most of it's not going to be applicable because that's all previously set up from test server. So that menu, it also doesn't have any impact on you playing the tutorial. It's just like an information system in terms of stats. But as you can see here, we've already had some prompts for melee and range attacks. We've had some prompts for movement. Now we just had a prompt for flight mode. But there also are a lot of characteristics you're going to be missing as a player in this tutorial that you will learn later on. That's why there's no point to have like an overly complicated tutorial, because that might just turn new players off from the game. You don't necessarily what people want to refer to as gatekeeping the solo. It's not meant to be, difficult. There are some aspects where they cover certain aspects and don't cover others, which I believe is a disservice, because you are going to be kind of exposed to that leveling on very early as well. So the first one happened previously. So when they had that kind of prompt up on the screen, you saw that I got a feat for the 25 hit counter. Feats in this game are a very core element in terms of how you gain skill points, how you gain access to more weapon combos, stats. And there's no prompt here in terms of what a feat is, what it does. Open up the feat menu. I believe there is a menu later in the game that comes up about feats. I can't recall exactly. I did make a more in-depth video on that if you search the universal messaging system. And then we just had a prompt about taser pull. So the same thing. We got granted access to an ability, but as I spam the ability here and run out of power, there's no mention in terms of what a power bar is. There's no mention in terms of what mana means, even though it's not referred to as mana in this game, it's power. So I could drain my power and not be able to use the ability, but the player not necessarily will be able to correlate why I can't use the ability to being out of power. So that's why there really should be a prompt for that. There's a counter indication here, holding shift for block enemy attacks. And you saw the chevron of the skull coming up across it. That is, blocking is a very core element to this game in terms of its mechanics. But there's also two others, which are lunge, interrupt, both the same thing, lunge or interrupt, and then countering or block breaking. So those two aspects of the core mechanics aren't covered at all in this tutorial, which is, I question that as well. The other aspect here is in the previous room and in future rooms here, you're going to see me pick up or destroy green barrels. What those are healing barrels that grant health and power return, which is another huge element towards not only the leveling process from 0 to 30, but you have access to the green healing barrels even in endgame content. That it's a really common place in terms of event and normal difficulty. You're going to see that, and you have to know that breaking this barrel. As you can see here, I'm standing in it. I'm getting power return, so I can use my abilities more often, and I'm getting health return if I'm getting attacked. So that is a really core element in terms of what a tutorial should be teaching, that you can break those barrels and have effects, and also you can pick it up. I can interact with the barrel, carry it forward with me until I need it, and there's no mention of that in the tutorial at all. I can throw it for damage, I can throw it and then obviously get the health and power return in this area. So really going throughout the tutorial, a new player would have no idea you'd be able to do this, and then would know it as they're leveling. They'll just see these barrels in the instances and maybe break one on accident, but not realize that it's actually helping them. So that really needs to be covered. I really think that the interrupt and blocking should be covered. I know that'll be a controversial topic, because in the past the tutorial had a section where you had to use these counter mechanics or you couldn't proceed, so it forced you into it. It shouldn't be, a force into it. It should just let you know that it is available, because you're going to see me here. So while I'm using my weapon attacks, you may see a symbol above my head. That means an NPC, one of these enemies, could lunge and counter me. So if that happens while you're in combat with a player, or if an NPC lunges you and counters you, you're not going to know what happened. Where at least in the tutorial, you may remember it saying, oh, okay, this is because they countered me. So it's just little aspects like that where a tutorial doesn't need to be long. The last tutorial was like 15, 16 minutes, even if you know what you're doing, which is obviously not practical whatsoever. So it really needs to be between 5 and 8 minutes. This is like an 8-minute one. I didn't really like mess around that much. You know, obviously some players may spend more time kind of looking around or listening to cutscenes, stuff like that. Same thing here. I got an ability here, which is number 2, which is called Gadget's Fear Gas. And when I use Fear Gas, technically you'll see a counter symbol above my head. That means I could be lunged, but you know, there's no reference of that either. And obviously more health barrels. Like that's the other confusing thing is I know I've kind of talked about it before, but there's health barrels everywhere throughout the tutorial, but it's not even mentioned what they are, what they do, and what you can do. And the other aspect here is that the tutorial will have a lot of insights from, you'll see here like Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman talking, Hawkgirl. You know, obviously it's a DC-oriented game with DC Comics directly tied to it for the IP. So it's really something they should, you know, highlight as well in the tutorial, which I think they do a good job in doing that in terms of you're a superhero in this game, I'm Mohawk Man, defeating Brainiac and helping the Justice League. So it's something that I believe is really strong here, at least in the tutorial, for kind of setting the expectation that it's not so much your comic book hero, but it's basically you're creating your own hero or villain, because you can be a villain as well. So this is another opportunity with Brainiac. Brainiac does do counters, so I mean he'll lunge you, you could technically block that and knock him down. You can interrupt him, but obviously there's no message, there's no prompt to that. So there's room to improve, certainly in the tutorial, to give a better expectation. That's all what it is. It's just another feat here. Same thing, it doesn't talk about what a breakout ability. So I just got a feat saying use the breakout ability once, but there's no prompt in terms of what a breakout is. Why would you need to break out? What's happening when you break out? It's just, for me, it's not about throwing a bunch of information at the player. It's just setting them expectations so that, you know, they have the best kind of leveling experience, so that they're used to what to expect going on. Because the same thing, if when you counter or lunge or block or pick up, smash environmental barriers, stuff like that, roll dodging, whatever, that's all a part of the leveling process from 0 to 30, but also endgame. It's all the same mechanics. You just get more used to it, and it's more challenging, but it's all core mechanics. So that's the new tutorial. Any kind of comments and questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section below, and we'll see you in the next video.